Hello guys, this is AJ. Welcome to another video. I have just opened up my Unity and today I think I'll be showing you how to set up a basic movement for our enemy. Maybe we'll make the enemy chase the player if the player reaches in a certain distance within the enemy's radius. So let's see how that can be done. So in our last video, we added a navmesh agent to the player and introduced the click to move. For this video, I'm just going to uncheck the click to move because I like the basic movement and I'm just going to uncheck the navmesh agent because we won't be needing it. Um, for the enemy, we are going to need a navmesh. So I'm going to add a navmesh here. Apply to prefabs enemy. I'm going to add a new script here. I'm going to call it enemy controller. And I'm going to attach it to our enemy. Add command and apply to prefab. Now let's open up our enemy controller in Visual Studios. Now in enemy controller, I'm going to introduce some variables. We are going to need a game object for our player. So serialize field. We need a navmesh agent. Serialize field. For adding navmesh agent, we need to add using Unity engine.ai. So let's add our navmesh agent. Then store our navmesh agent in this variable. So here we also need a certain radius within. If the player is within the radius, the enemy will start chasing the player. So I'm going to introduce a new float variable, chasing distance. So I'm going to introduce a new method here, which returns the distance between the enemy and the player. So float vector3 dot distance transform the enemy transform position and player dot transform dot position. So if the player is within a radius, where the enemy should start chasing the player. If get distance is less than or equal to our chasing distance, all we need to do is set the enemy navmesh agent dot destination to our player dot destination. Player dot transform dot position. So now let's see what will happen. Chasing distance, I'm just going to give 7f here. Yeah, for seeing the chasing distance, we can also use this ondraw gizmos. Yeah, so wide ondraw gizmos. Let's give a color. Gizmos dot color equal to color dot. I'll give it red. Gizmos dot draw via sphere from our center. So transform dot position and the chasing distance, which will be the radius. So let's see it in Unity. Yeah, now if we see the enemy, we can see the red sphere here, and if the player is inside this sphere, the enemy will start chasing the player. So let's test it out. Okay, yeah, I just forgot to set up the player here. So let's quickly add the player. Now let's see. Yeah, we can see that the enemy is attacking our player. But the problem is that now, since we have set the player's position as our target, the enemy is trying to enter the player because position will be the center of the player. So we need to give an offset distance. So let's introduce another variable, serialized field float. Let's call it chasing offset and initialize it to 1.5f. Or let's have it to 2f. Okay. So we have our distance, and here all we need to add is this condition and get distance is less than and greater than chasing distance. So if the distance between player and the enemy is less than our chasing distance and greater than our chasing offset, the enemy will chase the player. So we also want the enemy to look at the player while chasing. So I'm just going to add a transform dot look at player dot transform. Now let's see. I have set this navmesh region to angular speed 5000 and speed is equal to 6. And I've also added a little mass to our rigid body and frozen the rotation and position in y-axis so that the enemy won't fall over. So this is our sphere. Now the player is going to enter into the sphere, and we can see that the enemy is chasing. It reaches a offset distance and stops. Now if we move again, the enemy chases us again, and as soon as we leave the sphere, the enemy stops chasing us. Now if we want the enemy to go back to his original position when it when the player leaves the radius, we can do it by adding another variable and storing the original position. So serialized field, I'm going to add a vector 3 original position, and I'm also going to add an offset here for our original position. And in start, I'm just going to save the original position of our enemy. So transform dot position, and if the player is out of range, I'm just going to call else go to original position. If the distance of the enemy is now we'll need to add another method here for getting the distance of the current position and the original position. So float get I'm just going to rename this to get distance from player, and I'm going to call this get distance from original position, and I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. So one of the position is the transformed position, the other position should be our original position. So I'm just going to paste it here. So now we have the distance of our current position, distance between our current position and the original position. So if the distance is greater than our original position offset, greater than or equal to, let's set our offset to maybe 0.3f. So if it is greater than our original offset, let's set the destination to the original position. So we just need to copy this here. and change this to original version. And that's it. Let's check it out now. So we are entering into the sphere. The enemy is chasing us, and now after we have exited the sphere, okay, speed of the enemy is 2. Yeah, we can see that the enemy has gone back to its original position. You can see the enemy is returning back to its original position. And another thing I would like to do is, instead of having a variable here and getting the player like this, I'll just delete this and oh, maybe not delete that. I'll just get the player. I'll just set the player from here. So player equal to find object of type, say we have a movement script on our player, so let's call that of type movement. And not game object. Yeah, and since there is only one object with the movement script attached, which is our player, this will automatically be set into our player when the scene begins. So let's test it out. So let's remove our player from our enemy controller and see if it's working. Now if we hit play, we can see that the enemy is still chasing our player, so everything's fine. The reason why I did it like this is because it will be useful if we are not spawning the enemy. If the enemy is not there in the start scene and we want to spawn it at a later time, then we won't be able to set up the player like dragging and dropping it into here. So I think this will be useful at that time. And that's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you like my content, and see you all. Peace.